Awkwardy. Why is he here? The music didn't stop. It just faded under the weight of the voice. Glasses froze halfway to lips. Nations broke mid-sentence. Heads turned one by one like a slow wave moving across the room. He stood alone. No grand entrance. No announcement. Just a man in a simple, well-fitted suit. Quiet and completely out of place. A guard near the door shifted awkwardly, glancing between the man and the voice that had cut through the room. The voice belonged to a tall guy in a tailored navy suit, standing near the center with a group of others laughing, confident, untouchable. He stepped forward slightly, squinting like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Wait," he said louder this time, a grin forming. "No way." A few people around him leaned in, curious. Then it clicked, and the grin turned sharp. "That's him," someone muttered. A woman covered her mouth, half laughing. "Oh my God, it is him!" The whispers spread faster now. "That's the broke kid, right?" Yeah, from our class. I thought he disappeared. He actually showed up?" A low chuckle rippled through the group. At the entrance, the man didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't react. His eyes moved slowly across the room, taking it all in, the chandeliers hanging like frozen fire, the polished marble floors reflecting designer shoes, the tables lined with expensive bottles no one here had ever worried about affording, and the people, the same people, just dressed better. Now, more confident in their cruelty. "Yo!" the tall guy called out, raising his voice like he was greeting an old friend. "You lost, man?" Laughter. Not loud, not explosive, but sharp enough to cut. The man at the door blinked once. Calm, still silent. Another voice joined in. Nah, don't doing like that." A shorter guy stepped forward, shaking his head with fake sympathy. He probably just came for the buffet. After, someone added, "Yeah, bro, food's on the other side. Go ahead, don't be shy." A woman sipped her drink, smirking. "Honestly, I respect it. Free food at a place like this? I'd come too." The guard near the entrance shifted again. His hand hovered near the radio on his shoulder. "Sir," he said quietly, unsure, "do you have an invitation?" The man finally looked at him. Not annoyed, not nervous, just steady. "I do," he said. His voice was calm, low, certain, but it didn't matter. The tall guy clapped his hands once, stepping closer. "Come on, man. Don't make this awkward." He looked around at the others, grinning. "We all know this isn't his scene." A few heads nodded. "Yeah, seriously. Who even invited him? I thought this was private." The tension shifted now. It wasn't just mockery anymore. It was exclusion. Deliberate. Public. The kind that presses down on your chest and waits to see if you'll crack. The guard cleared his throat. "Sir, I'm going to need to see." Relax. The tall guy cut in, waving a dismissive hand. "I got this." He walked closer, stopping just a few feet from the man at the entrance. Up close, the difference was even more obvious. Confidence versus silence. Noise versus stillness. "Look," he said, lowering his voice slightly, like he was doing him a favor. "This isn't high school anymore. You can't just show up places you don't belong." A pause. Heavy. Deliberate. You get that, right? Behind him, a few people leaned in, watching like it was entertainment, waiting for a reaction, embarrassment, for something. But the man just stood there, hands relaxed at his sides, steady, unshaken, and somehow that made it worse. The tall guy's smile twitched. "Wow," he said, shaking his head. "Still quiet, huh?" "Guess some things never change." A woman laughed softly. "He probably thinks if he stays silent we won't notice him." "Too late for that," someone replied. Another voice, louder now. "Hey, remember when he used to wear a hoodie every day?" "Yeah, man, that thing had holes in it, and now he's here," someone added, looking around the room dramatically. "With us." The word hung in the air, drawn in concrete. The man's gaze shifted slightly. Not to them, but past them, toward the far end of the venue. The tall guy noticed. "Don't bother," he said, stepping slightly into his line of sight. "There's nothing for you here." A beat. "Harper, you should leave." Silence spread again. Even the music felt distant now. The guard looked between them, tension tightening his posture. "Sir," he said again, more firm this time, "I'm going to have to ask you to step outside." The man inhaled slowly. Not a sigh, not defeat, just a breath, and then a sound. Faint at first, barely noticeable. A low, distant thumping. Some people didn't catch it. Others did. Brows furrowed. "What is that?" someone whispered. The tall guy glanced toward the ceiling, annoyed. "What now?" The sound grew louder, rhythmic, heavy, unmistakable. Helicopter blades. The music faltered this time. Actually stopped. Conversations died completely. People turned, confused, some stepping toward the large glass windows lining the side of the venue. Outside, lights flickered across the dark sky. The thumping grew stronger, closer. "What the hell?" woman muttered, moving toward the window. The tall guy frowned, glancing back at the man at the entrance. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. The man hadn't moved, still standing there, still calm. But now there was something else. Not a smile, not arrogance, just a quiet certainty, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The helicopter came into view, descending slowly toward the open grounds just beyond the venue. Wind from the blades began to ripple through the trees outside. Napkins on nearby tables fluttered. Someone pushed the door open, stepping out to get a better look. "No way," he said under his breath. The room buzzed again, but differently now. Confusion, curiosity, unease. The tall guy looked back at the man one more time. Really looked this time, and for a brief second something didn't add up. The man met his gaze, unreadable, unshaken. The sound of the helicopter filled the night, and just as the tension reached its peak, everything paused, like the world itself was holding its breath. And then black, the sound of the helicopter fades into silence. And then years earlier, the same eyes, but younger, quieter, sitting at the very back of a classroom where no one ever looked twice. The bell rang and chairs scraped loudly across the floor. Conversations exploded instantly, weekend plans, parties, money, brands. Laughter filled the room like it always did. He didn't move, not right away. His notebook was still open, pages filled with tight, neat handwriting. Diagrams, numbers, ideas, things no one had ever asked him about. A teacher walked past his desk, gathering papers without stopping. Didn't look at him, didn't say his name, just passed by, like he wasn't there. He closed the notebook slowly, sliding it into his bag that had seen better Zeji's worn, zipper slightly broken. The kind of bag people noticed, but never for the right reasons. As he stood up, a group near the front burst into laughter. "Bro, I swear," my dad said, "if I don't like the professor, he'll just switch me out." "Must be nice," another said, grinning. "It is." They spoke loudly, confidently, like the world had already agreed to work in their favor. He walked past them quietly. No eye contact, no interruption, just movement. In the hallway, the noise doubled. Lockers slammed. Shoes echoed against the polished floors. Groups formed instantly, circles of belonging. And then there was him, moving between them, unnoticed. A guy bumped into his shoulder, barely slowing down. "Watch it," he muttered, already gone before any response could exist. He adjusted his bag slightly and kept walking. At the far end of the hall, near a row of windows, he stopped for a moment. Sunlight cut through the glass, casting long shadows across the floor. He stood there, eyed. Not the view outside, but the reflection in the glass. People passing behind him, laughing, existing in a world that didn't include him. Then he turned and kept going. Lunch period. The cafeteria was loud. Always loud. Tables filled quickly, groups claiming their spaces like territory. Trays slammed down, chairs dragged, voices overlapping into a constant hum. He stood in line, quiet, eyes forward. When it was his turn, he hesitated for half a second, scanning the options. Cheap, fast, enough. He took his tray and moved through the maze of tables. No one waved him over. No one called his name. At the corner, near a vending machine that hummed louder than it should, there was an empty table. He sat, alone. Across the room, the same group from earlier sat together, loud, animated, completely at ease. One of them threw his head back, laughing, nearly knocking over a drink. "Yo, remember that presentation last week?" someone said. "Which one?" the quiet kid. "What's his name?" A pause. "Exactly," another replied, and the table burst into laughter. He didn't look up, just kept eating, slowly, measured, like none of it reached him. But his grip tightened slightly around the plastic fork. Not anger, not even embarrassment, just awareness. He finished, wiped his hands, and stood up. As he walked past their table, one of them glanced at him briefly. "Hey," he said, nudging the guy next to him. "There he is." A few heads turned. Eyes followed him for a second. Then nothing. Conversation resumed, like he had already disappeared. Outside, the air was quieter. He sat on a low concrete wall near the edge of the school grounds, pulled out a small, worn book from his bag. Not a textbook, something else. Pages filled with notes in the margins, underlined sections, questions scribbled in. Light handwriting. He flicked it open and started reading. Minutes passed, then longer. The noise from inside the school faded into the background. This was where he existed, not in the noise, but in the quiet. A loose wire hung from a broken light fixture nearby. He noticed it, stared at it for a moment, then reached into his bag, pulled out a small toolkit. Simple, but functional. He slid off the wall, crouched near the fixture, and began adjusting the wire carefully. Fingers steady, movements precise, no hesitation, like he had done this before. Because he had. A few minutes later, the light flickered, then stabilized. He leaned back slightly, observing it, working. A small, almost invisible shift in his expression. Not pride, just confirmation. He packed the tools away and stood up. Behind him, 2 students walked past. One glanced at the fixed light. Huh, that thing's been broken for weeks. Maintenance probably finally did their job, the other replied. They kept walking. He didn't say anything, just watched them go for a second, then picked up his book again and kept reading. In a world that never noticed him, he was already building something they couldn't see. The apartment door didn't close properly. It never had. It needed a slight lift, then a push, then a pause before the latch finally clicked into place. He did it without thinking, like muscle memory. Inside, the air was still, wide-eyed, the kind that comes from exhaustion. A small space, 2 rooms, walls that carried every sound, a ceiling fan that turned slower than it should, clicking softly with every rotation. On the table near the window, bills were stacked in uneven piles. Some opened, not. He placed his bag down gently, careful not to knock anything over. From the kitchen, a faint clatter. His mother stood at the stove, one hand resting against the counter, the other stirring something in a worn pot. Her movements were slow, deliberate, not from calm, but from fatigue. "You're back," she said without turning. A pause. "You eat?" "Not really." She nodded slightly, like she expected that answer. "I'll fix something." "You don't have to." "I know," but she did anyway. That's how it worked. He stepped into the room, glancing at the table. One of the envelopes had a red stamp across it. Final notice. He didn't open it. Didn't need to. He already knew. From the stove, she shifted her weight, wincing slightly as she reached for a plate. "You're late," he said quietly. Extra shift. Another pause. They needed someone. He didn't ask anything else. Didn't say you should rest. Didn't say this isn't fair. Because both of them already knew. The food was simple. Rice. Something stretched to last longer than it should. They ate in silence, not uncomfortable. Just quiet. After a few minutes, she pushed her plate slightly away. "I'm not that hungry." He glanced at it, then back at her, but didn't say anything. He just kept eating, finishing his and hers. Later that night, the lights flickered once, then went out completely. The fan slowed to a stop, the clicking fading into stillness. Darkness filled the room. From the hallway, a distant voice complained. A door slammed. He didn't move, just reached under the table, pulling out a small flashlight, set it upright. A weak beam of light cut through the darkness. Enough. He opened his notebook, pages filled with diagrams, ideas, half-finished thoughts. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, time slowed. He leaned closer to the light, shadows stretching across the paper as his hand moved steadily, line by line, fixing something, building something, even in the dark. From the other room, a soft cough, then silence again. Hours passed like that. No distractions, no noise, just the scratch of pen against paper, and the quiet determination of someone who understood something most people didn't. No one was coming, not to help, not to fix anything, not to make it easier. Next morning, he woke up before sunrise. The apartment was cold. Still, his mother had already left. On the table, a small note. "Eat before you go." Next to it, a piece of bread wrapped in paper. He stared at it for a moment, then folded the note carefully and slipped it into his bag. The bread stayed where it was. Outside, the streets were barely awake. He walked past closed shops, past people setting up for the day, past a world that moved whether you were ready or not. At school, nothing changed. Noise. People. Same invisible line between those who belonged and those who didn't. But now he saw it clearer. Every interaction, every laugh, every opportunity given or taken away. It wasn't random, wasn't fair, and it wasn't going to change. Not for him. After classes, instead of going home, he stopped by a small repair shop a few blocks away. The owner barely looked up when he entered. "You again?" "I fixed the radio," he said, placing it gently on the counter. The man glanced at it, skeptical. "You said that last time." "I know." A pause. The man turned it on. Clear. The man's eyebrow lifted slightly. Impressed, but not dismissive either. He reached into the register, pulling out a few bills, slid them across the counter. "Don't expect this every time, don't." He took the money without counting it. "Got anything else?" he asked. The man studied him for a second, then jerked his head toward the back. "Piles over there, most of it's junk." He nodded, moved past him. The back room was cluttered. Broken devices stacked on shelves, wires tangled, pieces missing. To most people, useless. To him, possibility. He picked up one item, then another, examining, thinking, already working through solutions in his head. Hours passed. No one noticed. No one cared. And that was fine, because here effort mattered. Results mattered. Not where you came from, not what you wore, just what you could do. That night as he walked home, he saw her. His mother, standing outside a building he didn't recognize, talking to someone. A man in a suit, well-dressed, clean, comfortable. She stood slightly hunched, hands clasped together. He slowed his steps, stayed across the street. The man spoke first. Sharp. I told you already we can't keep extending deadlines. Her voice was softer. Careful. I just need a little more time. You've had time. I'm working extra shifts. That's not my concern. A pause. She swallowed. I'll pay. I always do. The man sighed, checking his watch. This isn't personal. It's business. He reached into his folder, pulling out a paper. You need to understand your position. The word landed heavy. She nodded slowly. Understand. But her voice said otherwise. He watched from across the street. Still. And the man handed her the paper without looking at her again. Then turned and walked away. Just like that. No hesitation. No wait. She stood there for a moment, staring at the paper in her hands, then folded it carefully, like it mattered. Like it had to. He didn't move until she started walking again. Slow steps, but still moving. Always moving. That night, he didn't open his notebook right away. Reach for the flashlight. He just sat there, thinking. Not about the man, not about the paper, but about the way she stood there, small. Not because she was weak, but because the world had decided she was. And in that moment, something settled inside him. Not anger, not rage. Something colder, clearer, a decision. He leaned forward, finally opening his notebook. The faint light flickered back on. His hand moved again. More precise now. More focused. He didn't need anyone to believe in him. Didn't need approval. Didn't need permission. He would build something, piece by piece, skill by skill, until one day no one could look at him the same way again. He wouldn't ask for respect. He would become impossible to ignore. The classroom felt smaller that day. Not physically, but in the way people looked at each other. In the way attention moved and where it didn't. The teacher stood at the front, writing fast across the board. Numbers, formulas, steps that most students copied without thinking. Group assignment, she said, turning around. You'll be working in teams of 4. I'll assign the groups. A ripple of reactions, some excited, some already turning in their seats, whispering planning. He stayed still, eyes on the board, waiting. Names started getting called. Ryan, Alex, Jenna, Marcus. They moved instantly, chairs scraping, laughing as they formed their group like it was obvious. Emily, Josh, Daniel, Chloe. Another cluster. Easy, natural. The teacher continued down the list. Each group forming without hesitation, until a pause. She glanced at her paper, then briefly toward the back of the room. At him. Just for a second. Then back down. We'll have 3 in that group, she said, pointing toward a nearby cluster that had already filled their seats. No one objected. No one even looked back. His name was never called. The room moved on, like it didn't matter. He sat there for a moment longer than necessary, then quietly opened his notebook, started writing. Not what was on the board. Something else. Across the room, Ryan leaned back in his chair, spinning a pen between his fingers. This is easy, he said. We'll just split it and get it done. Yeah, I'll handle the presentation, Jenna added. Obviously. Laughter. Confidence. Everything the system rewarded. He listened. Not to join. After class, as everyone packed up, the teacher walked past his desk again. She slowed this time. Make sure you find a group, she said, not quite meeting his eyes. They're already full, he replied. A pause. Well, you can join someone. Defined. Signed. He nodded once. She moved on. That was it. In the hallway, the usual noise. On. But now it felt sharper, like every sound carried weight. He approached one group near the lockers, the same one assigned earlier. Do you guys have space? He asked, voice steady. They looked at each other. A quick exchange. Then Ryan shrugged. We're already 4, man. You said 3. Yeah, well, we fixed it. A small smile. Not friendly. Final. He nodded once, moved on. Next group, same answer, different words, same result. By the time he stopped trying, the hallway had already shifted into something else. Plans, laughter, movement, and him, standing just outside all of it. That night, he didn't go to the repair shop, didn't open his book right away. He sat at the table, the same flickering light above him casting uneven shadows across the surface. The assignment sheet lay in front of him. Group project, presentation required, deadline 1 week. He stared at it, then flipped it over, blank side up. His pen hovered for a second, then moved. Not writing notes, not copying instructions, building something, piece by piece, lines connecting, ideas forming, not for the assignment, something else. At school, nothing changed. If anything, it got clearer. Questions were asked. Confident voices filled the room, even when they were wrong. He knew the answers, but didn't raise his hand. Not anymore. He had tried once, and it stayed with him. The teacher had asked a question complex, layered, something most students avoided. He had hesitated, then slowly raised his hand. It felt heavy. Unfamiliar. She looked surprised. Head, she said, all eyes turned. Not encouraging, just, he spoke carefully, explained the steps, broke it down, halfway through a chuckle. Then another. He stopped for a second, glancing toward the sound. Ryan leaned back in his chair, whispering something to the guy next to him. They laughed again. Not loud, but loud enough. The teacher didn't stop them, didn't say anything, just waited, like she expected him to continue. But the moment was already broken. His words felt slower now. He finished quietly. A pause. Then not exactly, the teacher said, already turning back to the board. And just like that, gone. No correction. No acknowledgement. Just dismissed. Heaved on, but something stayed. After that, he stopped raising his hand. Stopped trying to be heard in places that had already decided not to listen. Instead, he shifted. In class, he watched, observed, learned what mattered and what didn't. Outside class, he worked. Late nights turned into routine. The flickering light, the notebook, the quiet. Sometimes the power went out again. Didn't matter. He adjusted. Used the flashlight. Kept going. His hands moved faster now. More confident. More precise. At the repair shop, the pile in the back started getting smaller. The owner noticed. Didn't say much. But stopped questioning him. "Take this," he said one evening, sliding a broken device across the counter. "If you can fix it, I'll double what I paid last time." He nodded. Didn't negotiate. Didn't hesitate. Just took it. Because for him, this wasn't about the money. Not really. It was proof that skill mattered, even if no one at school could see it. Back there in the classroom, the presentations started. Group after group. Slides polished. Voices confident. Applause at the end of each one. He sat at the back, watching, waiting. The teacher checked her list, then frowned slightly. "And you?" she said, looking toward him. "Where is your group?" "I worked alone," he replied. A few heads turned. Interest flickered. "Alone?" she repeated. "Yes." "All right," she said, a hint of doubt in her voice. "Go ahead." He stood. Walked to the front. No slides, no flashy visuals, just a notebook. The room shifted slightly. Curiosity, but also expectation. Not of success, of failure. He began. Calm. Something built. Thought through, not copied. For a moment the room was quiet. Actually listening. Then a whisper. "Is he serious?" A snicker. Then another. The focus cracked. Again. He kept going. Rush. But the room had already decided. By the time he finished, the silence wasn't respect. It was disinterest. The teacher nodded once. "Okay," she said. "You can sit. No questions. No discussion. Just over." He walked back to his seat. Same as always, but inside something had changed. Not frustration. Not even disappointment. Just clarity. This system wasn't built for him, so he stopped trying to win inside it and started building something outside of it. Something they couldn't grade, couldn't ignore, couldn't take away. The auditorium lights were brighter than usual. Bright. They washed over the stage, flattening everything, leaving nowhere to hide. Rows of students filled the seats. Voices layered over each other, laughter, whispers, the low hum of anticipation. Teachers stood along the sides, clipboards in hand, watching like judges at something that mattered more than they would admit. On stage, a group finished their presentation to applause. Confident, smooth, polished. Of course. They stepped down, smiling, exchanging quiet high fives as they passed by. Backstage, he stood alone. Notes in his hand. He's shaking, but still. He's still. A teacher glanced at him. He nodded once. Just a breath. Slow in. Slow out. This wasn't like class. This was bigger. More people. More attention. More risk. He had spent nights preparing for this. Not just memorizing. Understanding. Building something deeper than what was required. Because this was his chance. Not to impress them, but to prove something to himself. His name was called. The sound echoed slightly through the auditorium. He stepped onto the stage. The lights hit him immediately. Blinding. Hot. For a second, the crowd disappeared into shadows. Then slowly, faces came into view. Rows of them watching, some curious, some already bored. And then them, near the middle. Ryan and his group leaning back in their seats like they owned the room. Ryan smirked the moment their eyes met. A small, almost invisible shake of his head, like he already knew how this would end. He looked away, focused forward, placed his notes on the podium, adjusted the mic slightly. A soft screech of feedback cut through the air. A few people winced. Someone laughed quietly. He ignored it. Today I'll be presenting. The screen behind him flickered. Once. Oh, then again, the projector blinked, struggling to stabilize. He paused, glanced back, waited. The image appeared for a second, then vanished. A murmur spread through the room. Seriously? Not again. A teacher near the side stepped forward. Just give it a second. He nodded, hands resting lightly on the podium, waiting. Seconds stretched. Too long. The room shifted. Attention drifting. He could feel it, slipping. The projector came back on. Flickering. Wait this time, started speaking. Them through the idea. Not rushing. Not panicking, because he knew this. Every part of it. For a moment it worked. The room quieted slightly. A few people leaned forward, listening. Then a voice. Low at first, from the middle rows. Yo, is this guy serious? A chuckle. Oh, then another. Ryan leaned toward the person next to him, saying something under his breath. They laughed, not loudly, but enough. Always enough. He kept going, eyes forward, voice steady. But the shift had started. The thin line of attention cracked. Another whisper. Bro sounds like a robot. Does he even know what he's saying? Laughter. His grip on the podium tightened slightly, almost unnoticeable. He moved to the next point, explaining something more complex now, something deeper, something they hadn't covered in class. The projector flickered again, then black. Awkward screen went completely dark. A collective groan filled the room. Come on, this is painful. He stopped, just for a second, looked back. Nothing. No slides, no visuals, just him. Alone on stage. A teacher whispered to another, frustrated. Can someone fix that? But no one moved fast enough. The silence stretched, waiting for him to fill it. He turned back to the audience, opened his mouth to continue. Maybe the projector gave up too. The voice cut clean through the room. Laughter exploded, louder this time, uncontrolled. Ryan leaned back, grinning openly now. A few people clapped sarcastically. The sound echoed. Mocking, he stood there. Or the were there, in his head. Clear, ready. But the noise, it pressed in from every side. Every laugh, every whisper, every glance. It wasn't just sound. It was weight, and it settled on his chest. Tight, heavy. His throat felt dry. He tried again. This action, his voice came out softer this time, almost swallowed by the room. More laughter. Someone coughed dramatically. Another voice, speak up, man. Not encouragement. Performance. Everything about it. He blinked once. Lights felt hotter now. The stage smaller. And at his notes, the words blurred slightly. Not gone. Just harder to reach. The teacher near the side shifted uncomfortably. Glanced at her watch. Then at him. Eyed down. Didn't reset. Disrespectful. He stood there for a few more seconds, trying to push through it. But something inside stopped. Not broken. Just paused. The teacher stepped forward slightly. All right, she said, forcing a polite tone. Let's move on. Just like that. Cut. No second chance. No recovery. Just over. He nodded once. Slowly. Picked up his notes. Turned. And walked off the stage. No one stopped him. No one said anything. Behind him, the next name was already being called. The room shifted instantly, like he had never been there. Backstage, the noise faded into a distant hum. He stood there for a moment, still holding the notes. His hands steady again, his breathing even. From the side curtain, he could see part of the audience. Ryan leaned toward his group, still smiling, saying something. They laughed again, but quieter now, like the moment had already passed. For them, it was nothing, just another joke, another forgettable scene. He looked at them for a second, then looked away. Not anger, not embarrassment, something else, something colder. He folded the notes once, carefully, slipped them into his bag, and walked out of the auditorium. No rush, no hesitation. Outside, the air felt different, cooler, real. He stopped near the empty hallway, leaning lightly against the wall. For a moment, he closed his eyes, not to escape, but to think. Every moment replayed. The laughter, the interruption, the way the teacher ended it. Clean, quick, final. And in that silence, the realization settled. Not dramatic, not loud, just certain no one was coming. No one was going to fix the system. No one was going to give him space to prove himself. Not here, not like this. He opened his eyes, straightened, picked up his bag, and started walking, not back to class, not back to the noise, somewhere else. Because if the stage they gave him wasn't built to let him win, then he would stop standing on it and build his own. Time didn't slow down after that day. It just stopped noticing him. At school, his seat at the back became permanent. Teachers stopped expecting anything. Classmates stopped even pretending to include him. It was easier that way. No pressure, no interruptions, no noise directed at him anymore. Just distance. In the hallway, people passed by like he wasn't there. Conversations flowed around him, never toward him. And for the first time, he didn't mind, because his focus had shifted completely. After school, while others drifted toward cafes, parties, or easy conversations, he walked in the opposite direction. Same route, same pace, straight to the repair shop. The bell above the door rang softly as he entered. The owner barely looked up anymore, just nodded once. "Back there," he muttered. That was all. No questions, no doubt, just space. In the back room, the piles had changed. Fewer broken devices now, more complicated ones. Things others had already given up on. He sat down, picked one up, and got to work. No rush, no hesitation, just focus. Every wire, every circuit, every small detail, it all made sense to him in a way people never did. Hours passed unnoticed. Sometimes he succeeded, sometimes he didn't. When something failed, he didn't react, didn't get frustrated. He just paused, studied it. Again, night after night, the routine repeated. Dim light, notebook, ideas evolving. At first, the pages were messy half finished sketches, crossed out plans, uncertain steps. But slowly they sharpened. Cleaner lines, clearer direction, less guessing, more knowing. He started using the old computer in the corner of the apartment more often. It was slow, but it worked. The screen flickered sometimes. The fan made a grinding noise like it might give up any second. Still, it was enough. He spent hours on it, learning, not what school taught, something else, watching, reading, failing. Again, again. Outside life, I moved forward for everyone else. He saw it, not directly, but in fragments. Voices in the hallway, conversations overheard. Got accepted already. My uncle set me up with an internship starting at my dad's company next summer. Easy paths. Already paved. Ryan's voice carried louder than most. "Bro, I don't even need to worry about this stuff," he laughed one afternoon. "Everything's handled. Handled. Like success was something you could inherit. Something you didn't have to build." He walked past them. No reaction. No glance. Just movement. Inside, nothing shifted, because he had already stepped out of that race. Completely. Weeks turned into months. At the repair shop, the owner started leaving him alone entirely. One evening, he placed a box on the table. "Client dropped this off," he said. "Expensive piece. If you mess it up, I'm not covering for you." He opened the box. Inside, something more advanced than anything he'd worked on before. Damaged, but not beyond repair. He looked at it, then nodded. "Handle it." The owner raised an eyebrow slightly. Didn't question him, just walked away. That night, he didn't go straight home. He stayed, long after the shop closed. Lights dimmed. Shutters down. The world outside quiet. Inside, just him and the machine. He worked slowly, carefully. Every move deliberate. Time blurred. Minutes turned into hours. Mistakes happened. Small ones. He corrected them, adjusted, adapted. By the time he finally leaned back, the sky outside had already started to lighten. He stared at the device for a moment, then powered it on. A pause, a flicker. Then it worked, perfectly. No glitches, no errors, just working. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He just sat there, watching it run. Confirming. When the owner came in later that morning, he didn't say anything at first, just walked over, looked at the device, turned it on, watched. A few seconds passed, then He reached into the register, pulled out a thicker stack of cash this time. Set it down, didn't count it out loud. "Take it," he said. He looked at the money, then at the device, then back at the owner. "You sure?" The man shrugged. "You fixed it. Simple." He took the money, folded it once, slipped it into his pocket. And in that moment, something shifted. Not in the room, not outside, inside. It wasn't about the amount. It wasn't life-changing. But it was real, earned, undeniable, that what he was building worked. From that point on, things moved differently, not faster, but clearer, taking on more work, Small jobs at first, then slightly bigger ones. People didn't know his name, didn't know his story, but they knew results, and that was enough. At school, he faded even further. Teachers stopped calling on him entirely. Group work no longer included him. His absence became normal, expected. No one asked where he was after class. No one noticed when he left early, or arrived late, or didn't show up at all. He wasn't part of their system anymore, and they stopped being part of his. Ryan and his group continued forward like nothing had changed. Better clothes, louder confidence, more connections. Their future looked smooth, guaranteed. They didn't look back, didn't think about the quiet kid in the back row, didn't remember the presentation, or the silence, or anything. He had already disappeared from their world. Completely. One afternoon, as he passed through the hallway, he overheard something. "Wait, whatever happened to that guy?" "Who?" The quiet one. Always alone. A pause. Then a shrug. "Don't know, doesn't matter." Laughter. And just like that he was gone. Erased. Forgotten. He kept walking. Didn't slow down. Didn't react. Because that was the moment everything locked into place. They weren't watching anymore. They weren't judging. They weren't expecting anything, which meant they would never see what was coming. And that was their biggest mistake. The first sign. Was small. Too small to notice at first. A delay. A payment that didn't come through when it was supposed to. He checked again. Nothing. The screen stayed the same. No confirmation. No update. Just silence. He leaned back slightly in his chair, eyes fixed on the old monitor. The faint hum of the computer filled the room, blending with the slow ticking of the clock on the wall. Maybe it was just late. That happened. Sometimes. He told himself that. Closed the window. Moved on. But the next day, still nothing. At the shop, the owner mentioned it casually. "That client you worked for?" he said, not looking up from the counter. "He's not answering calls." A pause.
"He already took the device?"
"Yeah." Another pause. Years. The owner shrugged. Like it wasn't surprising, like it wasn't important. But to him it was. That job wasn't just another repair. It was bigger, more complex, more risk. And now gone, unpaid. He nodded once, didn't argue, didn't react, just walked to the back room, picked up another device, sat down, and kept working, because that's what he did. No matter what. But something had shifted, slightly. The rhythm felt off. Later that week, another issue. A small project he had been building, something he had spent weeks on, stopped working. Not a simple error. Something deeper. He stared at it for hours, tracing connections, running through every possibility. Nothing made sense. It should have worked. It was working, until it wasn't. He tried fixing it. Once. Twice. Each attempt ending the same way. Failure. Quiet. The room felt smaller that night. The light dimmer. The air heavier. He sat there, hands resting on the table, eyes locked on something that no longer responded. For the first time in a long while, he didn't move, didn't reach for a tool, didn't open his notebook, just sat there, stretched. And slowly the thoughts started creeping in. Not loud, not aggressive, just present. What if this is it? What if this is where it stops? He blinked once, leaning back slightly. The ceiling above him stared back, cracked in places, unchanged. The same room, table. And suddenly it all felt closer than before. Like nothing had really changed. Like all the work, all the nights, all the effort hadn't moved him as far as he thought. His jaw tightened slightly. Not anger. Something else. Doubt. A quiet voice he hadn't heard in a long time. "You're not good enough." He exhaled slowly. Shook his head once. But the voice didn't leave. It grew. Pulling memories with it. The classroom. The laughter. The presentation. Let's move on. The way people looked at him. Or didn't. The hallway conversations. Doesn't matter. He closed his eyes. For a second, then longer. The room faded, replaced by fragments, voices, expressions, moments, all stacked together, all pointing to the same conclusion. Maybe they were right. Maybe all of this was just him trying to prove something that wasn't real. His hands clenched slightly, fingers tightening against each other. The thought stayed, heavy, persistent. He opened his eyes again. Slowly, the project sat in front of him, broken, unresponsive, like it was waiting, not for him to fix it, but to decide what it meant. He leaned forward, rested his elbows on the table, and just looked at it. Minutes passed, maybe more. Time didn't matter in that moment. Nothing did, except the question sitting in front of him. Do you stop here, or do you keep going? The room stayed silent. No answer came, because it wasn't going to. Not from outside, not from anyone else, just him. He inhaled slowly, then exhaled. His hands relaxed. The tension in his shoulders eased not from relief but from decision. He reached for the device again. Not with urgency, not with frustration, but with something different. Clarity. He turned it over. Looked deeper, past the obvious. Past what he had already tried. Something he missed. Something small. Something that didn't fit. He adjusted a wire. Paused. Tested again. Nothing. He didn't react. Just observed. Adjusted something else. Tried again. Still nothing. But this time he didn't feel the same pressure. Didn't feel the same doubt. Because something had changed. Not the situation. Him. The failure wasn't proof that he couldn't do it. It was information. He leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. Thinking. Not emotionally. Strategically. Every mistake. Every delay. Every loss. They weren't stopping him. They were shaping him. Refining him. Forcing him to get sharper. Smarter. Better. He sat there in the quiet room, the faint hum of the broken system still in the air. And for the first time that night, the doubt faded. Not completely, but enough. Enough to move. Enough to continue. He picked up his notebook, opened to a clean page, and started again. Not repeating the same approach. Not chasing the same result. But rebuilding. From a better place. Outside, nothing had changed. The world was still the same. People still moved the same way. The system still worked against him. But inside, something had locked into place. He wasn't chasing success anymore. He was building it, piece by piece. And this time he wasn't just working hard. He was working right. The notebook changed first. The pages weren't crowded anymore. No messy lines, no scattered thoughts. Everything had structure, clear, intentional. Each idea led to the next. Every mistake from before had been studied, broken down, and rebuilt into something sharper. He didn't rush anymore, didn't chase quick fixes. He slowed down. And somehow that made everything move faster. At the repair shop, the work shifted. Less random. More selective. When the owner dropped a device on the table, he didn't immediately reach for it anymore. He looked. Not worth it, he said once, pushing it back slightly. The owner paused. Eyebrows lifting. You're turning down work. Ike too long, low return. A small silence. Then the owner gave a short nod. Didn't argue. Didn't question. That was new. He had stopped taking everything. Started choosing. That was the difference. Nights at home felt different too. The old computer was still there. Still slow. Still loud. But now there were results on the screen. Small at first. Numbers that didn't look like much. But they grew. He didn't celebrate them. Didn't share them. He just tracked them. Watched patterns. Adjusted. Every move had purpose now. Every step built on the last. Failure still came. Of course it did. But it didn't stop him anymore. Didn't even slow him down the same way. It just redirected him. Refined the path. Weeks turned into months, then more. And somewhere along the way things changed. Not loudly, not all at once, but noticeably. The repair shop wasn't just a place to learn anymore. It became a starting point. People started asking for him, not by name. At first, just the guy who fixed it last time. The owner would glance toward the back. Yeah, he's here. And that was enough. Word spread quietly. One person, then another. No marketing, no announcements. Just results. Reliable. Consistent. Better than expected. All remembered. One evening, the owner leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You ever think about doing this on your own? He asked. He didn't look up immediately. Just finished tightening a screw. Tested the device. Then answered. I already am. The owner studied him for a second, then smirked slightly. Yeah, I can see that. No tension. No jealousy. Just recognition. That was new too. At school he was almost gone. Not physically, but socially. Completely invisible. No one called his name anymore. No one expected anything from him. He sat. Left. That was it. Ryan and his group had moved into a different space now. More confident. More polished. Talking about internships. Announcements. Sounded big but were already handed to them. One afternoon their voices carried across the hallway again. Bro, we're setting up something huge after graduation. Yeah, connections are already in place. Easy money. Laughter. Confidence. Certainty. He walked past them, same as always. But this time there was a difference. Not in them. He didn't feel smaller anymore. Didn't feel outside. Didn't feel anything at all. Because their world wasn't his target anymore. He had built something else. Something they didn't understand. And didn't need to. Months later, the numbers on his screen weren't small anymore. They meant something now. Real money. Real movement. He upgraded the computer. Quietly. Replaced parts one by one. More capable. The apartment didn't change much. Still small. Still worn. But the pressure inside it shifted. Bills got paid. The red stamps disappeared, one by one. His mother noticed. Of course she did, but she didn't ask questions, just watched, carefully. One night she stood in the doorway while he worked. "You've been busy," she said. He nodded slightly. "Yeah." "You're doing okay?" He didn't answer right away. Then yeah. Simple. But this time it was true. She nodded once, didn't push further, didn't need to. The room returned to quiet, but it wasn't the same quiet as before. Felt lighter, more stable. Time moved forward again. Graduation came and went. No big moment, no recognition, no applause. Just another day. He didn't stay long. Didn't take pictures, didn't linger. Because for him that chapter had already ended long before the ceremony. Outside of that world things kept growing. He expanded. Not loudly, but strategically. Connections formed, not through charm, not through status, through value. People who mattered noticed, not because he asked them to, because his work reached them. And once it did, it stayed. He didn't chase attention. He built systems, processes, things that worked without him constantly pushing them. That was the difference now. He wasn't just working in it. He was building something that worked for him. And then one evening an email arrived. Simple, short. Subject line, class reunion, you're invited. He stared at it for a moment. Didn't open it right away. Didn't need to. He already knew what it was. Not respect, not recognition. Something else. He clicked it. Details filled the screen. Names. Familiar ones. Ryan. All of them. A small message at the bottom. Would be great to see everyone again. He leaned back in his chair, eyes scanning the words. Then a second message, from someone else. Less formal. "Yo, you should come. It'll be fun. Everyone's gonna be there." A pause. Then another line. "Would be interesting to see what you're up to now." Interesting. He almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable. They didn't know. Still didn't. To them, he was the same. The quiet one. The invisible one. The easy target. He closed the laptop slowly. Sat there for a moment. Thinking. Not emotionally. Not reacting. Just calculating. The room was quiet. The same walls. The same table. But everything inside him different. He stood up. Walked to the window. Looked out at the city lights. Steady. Bothered. Then he made the decision. Not out of pride. Not out of anger. Not to prove anything. But because it was time. He would go. Not as the person they remembered. Not as the person they dismissed. But as someone they would have to see. Whether they wanted to or not. And this time he wouldn't be standing at the back. He wouldn't be waiting to be heard. He wouldn't be asking for space. He would walk in on his own terms and let the silence do the rest. The sound didn't stop. It grew louder, heavy, wideable. The blades cut through the night air, sending waves of wind across the venue grounds. Outside, trees bent slightly under the force. Inside, the chandeliers, tumbled just enough to catch attention. Every conversation died, completely. People moved instinctively toward the glass walls, curiosity pulling them closer. Phones came out, heads tilted upward. "What is that? Is that a helicopter?" "No way." The tall guy Ryan turned halfway toward the windows, irritation fading into confusion. "Who the hell is landing a helicopter here?" No one answered, because no one knew. At the entrance, the guard stepped back slightly, his attention no longer on the man in front of him. His radio crackled faintly, but he didn't respond. Everyone was looking outside now, except him. He stood exactly where he had been. Calm. Moved. The wind grew stronger as the helicopter descended onto the open lawn just beyond the venue. Lights from its body flashed across the glass, casting moving shadows across the room. The noise filled everything, dominated everything. For a moment, nothing else existed. Then the engine slowed. The blade still turning, but softer now. Controlled. Deliberate. A few people pushed the doors open, stepping outside despite the wind, drawn by something they didn't understand yet. Inside, the room held its breath. Ryan looked back again. At him. Really looked this time. His clothes. His posture. The way he stood without reacting. Something didn't fit. Not anymore. "Yo," someone whispered behind him. "Why is he still here?" No one laughed. No one responded. Because the tone had changed. Completely. Outside, a figure stepped out from the helicopter. Dressed sharply. Professional. Moving with purpose. He didn't rush. Didn't hesitate. Just walked straight toward the entrance. The doors opened wider. Wind swept through the room, carrying the sound with it. Napkins lifted off tables. Hair moved. Dresses shifted. The atmosphere cracked open. The man walked inside, scanning the room once quick, efficient. Then his eyes locked onto him. Immediate. Certain. He walked forward without acknowledging anyone else. Past groups. Past conversations that had now turned into silence. Past Ryan. who instinctively stepped aside without even realizing it. The man stopped a few feet in front of him. Slight nod. Respectful. "Sir," he said, voice steady over the fading hum outside. "We're ready." A pause. The word hung there. "Sir." It landed differently in the room. He didn't react immediately, just looked at him, then nodded once. "Give me a minute, of course." The man stepped back, waited, not impatient, not demanding, just ready. Inside, something shifted. People looked at each other, then back at him, then back at the helicopter outside. Dots started connecting, slowly, then faster. Ryan's expression tightened. The confidence, the easy arrogance cracked just slightly. "Whoa." No one answered, because now they were all watching him. The same person they had just mocked, the same person they had tried to remove, standing there like nothing had happened, like none of it mattered. He finally moved, one step forward, then another, not rushed. Just certain. As he passed by the group, no one spoke. No jokes, no whispers, just silence. Uncomfortable. Ryan opened his mouth slightly like he wanted to say something, anything. But the words didn't come, because for the first time he didn't have control of the moment. Didn't understand it, didn't own it. Their eyes met briefly, just a second, but it was enough. No anger, no pride, just calm. And something deeper, something Ryan couldn't read. He looked away first, subtle, but clear. He stepped past them, toward the open doors. The wind outside brushed against his suit, moving it slightly as he stepped onto the grounds. The helicopter sat there, steady now, waiting, the blade still spinning slowly. Controlled power. The man who had greeted him moved to the side, giving him space. No rush, pressure. Inside, people followed to the doorway, watching. Some stepped outside. Others stayed just behind the glass, phones still in hand. But no one spoke, because now they understood. Not fully, but enough. He walked toward the helicopter. Each step measured, grounded, nothing forced, everything earned. Behind him, the venue stood quiet. All the noise, all the laughter, all the mockery gone, replaced by something else. Recognition. Shock. A shift that couldn't be undone. Ryan stood near the doorway watching, his jaw slightly clenched, eyes narrowed. Trying to process something he hadn't prepared for. This wasn't part of the script. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He wasn't supposed to stand there. He wasn't supposed to walk like that. He wasn't supposed to have this. But he did. And there was nothing Ryan could say to change it. Nothing anyone could say. Because the moment didn't belong to them anymore. It belonged to him. He reached the helicopter, paused for a second, then turned his head slightly, just enough to glance back, at the building, at the people, at the same place that once reduced him to silence, the same kind of room, the same kind of eyes, but now different, completely different. He didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't acknowledge anyone directly. He didn't need to, because his presence had already said everything. He turned back, stepped inside. The door closed smoothly behind him. The engine picked up again. The blades spun faster. Wind rose, stronger. The ground beneath shifted slightly. People stepped back instinctively, hands shielding their faces from the force. Inside the venue, glasses rattled faintly. Outside, the helicopter lifted. Slowly at first, then higher, rising above the building, above the lights, above everything. The sound filled the space one last time, then faded into the distance, leaving behind silence. Ryan stood there, still, watching the empty sky. No words, no laughter, no control. Behind him, someone finally spoke, quiet, almost to themselves. Who was that? No one answered. Now they all knew. They just hadn't seen it coming. And that was the difference. He didn't come back to prove them wrong. He came back as something they could never ignore again. The noise didn't come back the same way. Even after the helicopter disappeared into the distance, the room didn't recover. Music restarted, softly, almost uncertain. People returned inside, slowly, but something had changed. You could feel it, in the way voices dropped, in the way people looked at each other before speaking, in the way laughter didn't sound as confident anymore. Ryan stood near the doorway a little longer than everyone else, still staring at the sky, like he was waiting for something to make sense. It didn't. Behind him, conversation started again, but quieter now. Different. Did you see that? That was for him, right? Who is he now? I thought he was, no one finished that sentence. Because whatever they thought before didn't match reality anymore. Inside, people gathered in smaller groups, phones out, searching, whispering, trying to catch up to something they had missed for years. And in the middle of it all, an empty space where he had stood. the same place they had laughed, now untouchable. A few minutes later, the doors opened again. Heads turned instantly. The sound alone was enough, but this time it wasn't loud. No wind, no spotlight, just him, walking back in. Calm, composed, like nothing had happened, like he had just stepped out for a moment. Conversations stopped again, not out of shock this time, out of awareness. People moved slightly, making space without being asked. Eyes followed him. Not mocking, not dismissive, watching, careful. A woman stepped forward hesitantly. I didn't recognize you at first, she said, forcing a small smile. He looked at her. Oh, that's okay. Her smile faltered slightly. She nodded, didn't know what else to say. He didn't fill the silence. He didn't need to. She stepped back. Another person approached. Man, it's been a long time, he said, trying to sound casual. It has. You've been doing well? A small pause. Yes. Explanation. No details. Conversation ended there, because there was nothing else to hold on to. Across the room, Ryan finally moved. Slow steps. Measured. Like he was thinking through every word before saying it. He stopped a few feet away. Close enough. Not too close. Didn't expect to see you here, he said. The tone was different now. Less sharp. Less certain. He looked at him, the same way he had earlier. Calm. Unreadable. I was invited. A pause. Ryan nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess you were. Silence stretched between them. Not hostile, but not comfortable either. Ryan shifted his weight slightly. You've changed. The words felt heavier than he intended. Like an admission. He didn't respond right away. Then people do. Ryan let out a short breath, almost a laugh, but it didn't fully form. Yeah, he said quietly. I guess they do. Another pause. Ryan glanced around the room, at the people watching, at the space that no longer belonged to him. You know, back then he started, then stopped. The sentence didn't finish, because it didn't need to. Everything about back then was already understood. He looked at him, waited, but didn't push. Ryan exhaled slowly, shook his head once. Yeah, he muttered. Matter, and that was it. No apology. No confrontation. No closure in words. Just realization. Ryan stepped back. Not forced, not dramatic. Just moved. The distance between them became clear. Not physical. Something deeper. Something permanent. He didn't follow. Didn't watch him leave. Because that chapter was already done. Around him, people continued to approach. Short conversations. Polite. Curious. Respectful. But all of them ended the same way. He didn't stay long in any of them. Didn't explain himself. Didn't relive the past. He acknowledged. Then moved on. Like none of it defined him anymore. Because it didn't. After a while, the room settled into a new rhythm. But it wasn't the same energy as before. Something was missing. Or maybe something had been exposed. He walked toward the side of the room. Past the tables. Past the same space where he once stood alone. Everything looked the same, but felt completely different. He paused near the window, looking out at the dark sky. No helicopter now. Just quiet. Steady, he stood there for a moment, not thinking about them. Not thinking about the past. Just present. Then he turned, walked toward the exit. No announcement. Just movement. A few people noticed. Leave. No one stopped him. No one called out, because somehow they understood. This wasn't a place he needed anymore. At the door, he paused briefly. Hand on the handle. The same entrance. The same threshold. But not the same person. He opened the door. Stepped out. The cool night air met him instantly. Quiet. Real. Behind him, the venue remained. Lights on. People inside. Still processing. Still talking. Still trying to understand something they had overlooked for too long. He didn't look back. Didn't need to, because the story wasn't there anymore. It had moved. Waitam. The steps. On his own terms. And for the first time, he didn't feel outside of anything. He wasn't trying to belong. He wasn't trying to prove himself. He had already done that. Not by fighting for a seat. Not by asking to be seen. But by building something so strong they had no choice but to notice. And even then he didn't stay, because he didn't need their table anymore. He had built his own.